Hello everybody, welcome to my usual Friday message. I'm wearing a tie because I've just stepped out of the board of directors meeting, and there's as usual a wonderful video from our chair Kath Lavery that I'd encourage you to take a look at that describes the kind of conversations that we've been having in that board meeting. A really productive time. As always, here's the flu number. Now, I reckon we're making progress, but I also sense there's quite a lot of people who might have had their flu vaccine, but haven't yet had the chance to go onto the staff portal and check their data. So I've got a double plea really. One, get your flu vaccination, please. Even though we're nearly into December, it's still important. And two, just take a look through the guidance on how to just quickly check and update your record if you have yourself had a flu vaccine somewhere else, or you think you might have been missed off our data. Remember, we're still chasing down 3,000 vaccinations. The main thing I wanted to talk about today is the launch of something quite exciting, which is our investment bids process for next year. Now, this is the pot of money that we've set aside to make sure we can pay for what in the jargon might be called cost pressures, in other words, unavoidable costs, but also investments in new things or improving existing things. You'd expect me to link that to our 28 promises. You'd expect me to link it to the risk register. You'd expect me to remind you that I spoke about this in July. So from my point of view, here we are as the clinical leadership executive delivering on what we said, which is that we'd need to make significant cost reductions during this year, but we would balance that with trying to make some investments in things that are most important. So there's a little bit of detail attached to this message of what the bid process is, who will decide what's most important in that. Do take a look. If you've got any questions, feel free to come back to me, talk to other leaders within our care groups or our corporate directors. But it's a genuinely open process. There's no rigging going on. It's really important that we choose between good ideas and spend that £3 million next year in the most effective way possible. Now, of course, I'm now going to mention a couple of promises, and the risk is that you think that means they'll get all the money. Worry not, but there are just a couple that might illustrate some of the things that sit behind that investment process. So firstly, you remember that the very first promise is to put peer support workers at the heart of every function and department in the organisation. Now, we've got perhaps 24 peer support workers in our organisation at the moment, many for the best part of a decade, doing some fantastic work. But you can appreciate that promise one there on the screen is a massive escalation of those arrangements, and that's going to take some investment. So there must be teams out there who really want to go first or want to go further with that peer support worker process. And then, of course, there's promise 16, which talks about outcomes and how, as an organisation, we want to migrate to really focus on outcomes. That's been a big part of the board discussion that's been taking place, because it's easy to say and it's hard to do. And the key to outcomes isn't always investment, but sometimes a little bit of thought can grease the process, make things a little easier to reach into our communities, to listen to people about the outcomes that are important to them, to collect the data, really measure it and use it. So there you go. I've added a couple more promises to the ones I mentioned most Fridays, but my really big point is 3,000 flu vaccinations and £3 million of potential investment here inside Ardash over the coming 12-15 months. So really important that everybody in our organisation plays a part in having the opportunity to say what's most important in terms of those bids. Take a look at the document. It lays out the sorts of things that will be the criteria for choice when, as a clinical leadership executive, we make some decisions at the back end of February. But first submissions are due in the middle of December. So you've got 2-3 weeks to get a couple of sides of A4 meaningfully together. I know a bunch of people have been working on their bids for a while since I advertised it in July. So thank you for that hard work. I think a really positive way to go into the final month of 2023. be even more positive in December if we've got to that 3,000 flu vaccinations. So let's keep up the effort. Thanks for what you do. Cheers.